From winning 8 Grand Prix surprising people all over the world, to the McLaren axe that left him without a competitive racing seat in 2023. Here is the burning question: is Daniel Ricciardo making a return? Well, he's been eyeing a 2024 comeback for a while now. It's barely been 3 months since he stepped into his first year away from the F1 grid, and he's already thinking about one of those racing seats that was snatched away from him. Just last season, McLaren decided to end his contract a year earlier than expected, thanks to his disappointing performance over the years. Plus, they replaced him with Oscar Piastri after one heck of a legal battle over his contract. While Ricciardo got a huge payout after he was left without a racing seat for 2024. He didn't have a lot of competitive offers on the table either. Sure, Haas and Williams reached out with a racing seat, but he wasn't ready to move to the back of the grid. Instead, he was ready to take a break and move away from the F1 grid entirely, because he figured being associated with the team on the back of the grid is never gonna get him back to the same position he left. But just when things got a little too serious and he was moving away from Formula One, Mercedes swooped in with a reserve driver offer, and rumor has it he was supposed to replace Lewis Hamilton in 2024. Well, it would definitely make sense. George Russell isn't going anywhere, especially after his first victory at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in 2022. Not to mention, it was also the team's only victory that season. Meanwhile, the 7-time champion faced a controversial season finale in 2021, topped with the first winless season of his career in 2022. So let's just say he's not really at the top anymore, and Mercedes can't figure out why. Not only that, but his contract is gonna end by the end of 2023, so everyone was expecting him to move towards retirement. Having said that, as soon as the rumor made headlines, he didn't make any effort to confirm that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Instead, he's got his eyes set on a record-breaking 8th championship title, and without it, he's not thinking about retirement. Plus, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff stepped in to back him up, saying they're gonna discuss a multi-year contract over the winter. But while that may have crushed the Australians' hopes of bagging a racing seat with the top team, the contract was never finalized. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton decided to leave the team instead. Now, it's pretty clear that he didn't have the dramatic start that everyone was expecting from him this season, and if he's not gonna win at Mercedes and they're not extending his contract either, he might have to end the partnership and move on to another team, possibly Ferrari. And if that happens, that'll leave the team with an empty seat, and Ricciardo would definitely make it to the top of the list. But that's not his only option after rejecting the team's reserve driver offer.
Definitely learned over time, like never say never. You don't know what the future holds. So it's not that I ever ruled out in my head that I would return to the Red Bull family, but yeah, like 4 years ago, I certainly thought it was a long shot,
He ended up going back to his former team, Red Bull, and while he's still a reserve driver there, I wouldn't be surprised to see him with a racing seat in 2024. Think about it, the team has a pretty toxic cycle of swapping its drivers, just so they can match up with their star driver Max Verstappen. First, they promoted Pierre Gasly, only to demote him about 6 months later, right in the middle of the season, and then he was replaced by Alex Albon, who did not last too long either. Finally, they stuck with Sergio Perez, who seemed to be proving himself over the last couple of seasons. So would it really be that surprising to see him mess up and get replaced again? Well, not really. Having said that, the entire idea behind taking up a reserve driver role instead of a sabbatical was to stick around the F1 grid. Sure, he's not racing right now, but the teams are gonna remember him when they're setting up the drivers lineup for 2024. Not to mention, Ricciardo can't go on like this for much longer. He's used to the pressure and thrill of Formula One racing, and he's not ready to give it up. In fact, in a recent interview, he said that being his own boss and writing his own schedule has him thinking about his future in motorsport, but he knows that his options are limited. Right now, with Hamilton sticking to his team and Perez staying on top of his game, the top teams like Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin might end up sticking with the driver lineups they've already got. I mean, it all boils down to Hamilton's Verstappen's next move, too. He's been talking about extending his deal with nothing to come out of it. Meanwhile, Ricciardo's set on a 2024 comeback at any cost, and he's not ready to start from scratch and rebuild his career for another decade just to be one of the F1 drivers on the grid. He needs a top team. Sure, he doesn't have the best opportunities right now, but he's still working through the weaknesses that landed him here in the first place. Not to mention, he hasn't been approached by any team for a 2024 race driver either. No offers, no negotiations, nothing. So he's waiting for the right time right now. Plus, he feels it's still a little too early on to stick with a rigid plan for now. If anything, he needs to figure out his options and is kinda hoping for things to happen organically. I mean, he's probably gonna wait until summer, like June or July, just to see where he's at. Plus, he also mentioned he would sit down with his team at that point to figure out how to get him back on the grid. Realistically, other than that, he's not going to do an awful lot more before then. Having said that, feelings of regret might be pinching him as he spends racing weekends back with his team. I mean, let's not forget why he left in the first place, claiming a major chunk of his wins with Red Bull. He finally left after Verstappen began to overtake him, and Ricciardo wasn't quite okay with anyone else being the center of the spotlight. In fact, that's exactly what made him switch to Renault in the first place. And considering his performance ever since then, it might have been the wrong move. I mean, I'm definitely not the only one thinking it, right? Plus, now that he's back in the team, the dynamic has flipped altogether. Back then, he was Verstappen's teammate. Now the Dutchman's a two-time world champion, dominating the season for the third time, while Ricciardo is stuck as the reserve driver. As for Christian Horner, the Red Bull chief, he claims the Australian was let down by the limitations of his car. There's only so much you can do in that kind of situation, and when he came back to Red Bull this year, he was unrecognizable. Having said that, the winter break has sort of helped turn things around for the Honey Badger, and now he's ready to hit the ground running. Sure, he's not out there on the F1 grid right now, but according to Horner, he's doing a great job on the sidelines as well. With the whole marketing campaigns, briefings, and the simulator, he's got a lot on his plate, but as long as he's working it out, that's all that matters. Plus, he's pretty much known for his positive energy, and now that he's got his mojo back, Horner's pretty confident he's gonna be able to kickstart his F1 career again. With that said, there are a bunch of things for the Australian to consider for the next season right now. I mean, let's not pretend that retirement isn't an option either. Sure, the truth hurts, but he's gotta figure it out one way or another. Until then, here's my question for you. Do you think Daniel Ricciardo will make a comeback in 2024? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.